A number of years ago, a gentleman said to me that his son asked him, Dad, do you love God more or mom more? Like, who do you love more? Do you love God or do you love mom? And it really struck him because it kind of was one of those questions that came out of nowhere. But after he didn't answer the question immediately, but after he thought about it, he said, I love God more. And that's wow. Obviously, hopefully his wife didn't hear about that. But if we think about it, when we look to the person of Jesus who revealed who God is, how loving God is, how caring God is, how forgiving God is, we cannot help but fall in love with God. And then we have to stay in love with God and to keep that focus. Now, it's not easy. And then the first reading from the book of the prophet Amos. Amos has a challenge. He's thrown it out there that people are abusing others. It's very plain and simple. And they are not even respecting the Sabbath, or that is to say, they just want the Sabbath to be over. And we're still challenged today. How do we take our Sabbath? How do we take our rest? How do we give at least one day where we focus on God and focus on rest? And so it's part of rejuvenation, because when I think of God, even there's rejuvenation, there's rest in that. And when I do something that's different, which I'm not doing the other 6 days of the week, that's also rejuvenating. So how important that is. Now, in our day of rest, in our day of focusing on, the other thing we can obviously do is, the second reading points out, is to pray for the kings and people in high positions, or that is to say, politicians. Of course, you can go to any coffee shop, and what's probably the most common topic we'll hear about is bashing politicians. Now, what good does that do? Why don't we just take the time to pray for them? I mean, they don't have an easy job. I wouldn't want to be a politician. I wouldn't even know the first thing to do to try to lead a country. So we have to pray for them, but we have to pray that they will be guided by God. But of course, let us also begin at home with ourselves too, that we're guided by God. In the gospel reading, obviously wealth can lead to greed, can also lead to dishonesty. And the best thing to do is just to simply be generous. As God is generous with us, we have to be generous with others. And if we have fallen in love with God and we stay in love with God, the natural thing for us to do is to give of our time and our treasure and our talents for the benefit of others, to serve the common good of humanity. So once again, as we gather around the table, Lord, who do you love more? Well, as you say amen, you are saying that you love God. And we know that God has initiated this love to us first, and we cannot help but give thanks and be witnesses of God's love for our world.